Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're diving headfirst into the murky, often infuriating world of minimum wage. Now, most people would agree that a fair day's work deserves a fair day's pay, right? Well, tell that to someone trying to survive on less than $1 per. That's right, folks. We're talking about the countries where the minimum wage makes a McDouble look like a 3-Michelin-star dining experience. Now, you might be thinking, Pedro, surely those countries have a much lower cost of living. Maybe a loaf of bread costs a nickel, and rent is paid in pocket lint. And while the cost of living does, of course, play a factor, the reality is far more complicated and, frankly, depressing. We're talking about places where people are working themselves to the bone, often for companies that rhyme with schmamazon, just to afford the bare minimum. Over the next few chapters, we'll be taking a closer look at the countries with the lowest minimum wages in the world, examining the real human impact of these shockingly low figures. We'll explore the factors contributing to these wages, from government policies to corporate greed, and shine a light on the daily struggles faced by millions of people just trying to make ends meet. Buckle up, because it's going to be a bumpy, infuriating, and hopefully eye-opening ride. Let's kick things off in West Africa, shall we? Sierra Leone, a nation known for its beautiful beaches, vibrant culture, and unfortunately, its devastating history of civil war. After enduring such hardship, you'd think they'd at least try to pay their citizens a living wage, right? Well, you'd think wrong. Sierra Leone currently boasts a minimum wage of around 3 cents per. You heard me right, folks. 3 measly pennies. You'd struggle to buy a gumball with that kind of money, let alone feed a family, pay rent, or, survive. And before you ask, no, they haven't switched to a bartering system where you can trade a handful of sand for a week's worth of groceries. Now, the government might argue that the cost of living is lower in Sierra Leone, and they wouldn't be entirely wrong. But even taking that into account, this wage is pitifully inadequate. It's like trying to put out a raging inferno with a squirt gun filled with lukewarm tap water. Spoiler alert, it doesn't work. This abysmally low minimum wage traps a significant portion of the population in a cycle of poverty, forcing them to make impossible choices daily. Do they put food on the table or send their children to school? Do they pay for medicine or keep a roof over their heads? It's a lose-lose situation, and frankly, it's a disgrace. Next up, we're heading east to Uganda, a country often dubbed the Pearl of Africa for its stunning natural beauty and diverse wildlife. But beneath this picturesque facade lies a harsh reality for many Ugandans, a reality where survival is a daily struggle. You see, Uganda boasts a minimum wage that's about as useful as a chocolate teapot, clocking in at a whopping 5 cents per. That's right, folks, 5 cents. You could buy maybe half a gumball with that, assuming inflation hasn't driven up the price of sugary treats. Now, some might argue that Uganda is a developing nation and economic progress takes time. And while that's true, it's crucial to remember that behind these economic indicators are real people, real families struggling to survive on wages that would make Oliver Twist ask for seconds. This low minimum wage has a ripple effect throughout Ugandan society. It fuels poverty, limits access to education and healthcare, and perpetuates a cycle of inequality that's difficult to break. It's like trying to build a skyscraper on a foundation of sand. It's simply not sustainable. And now for a country that might make you say, wait, seriously, we're talking about Nigeria. You know, Nigeria, Africa's largest economy, the land practically overflowing with oil. Yeah, well, apparently that oil money isn't exactly trickling down to everyone, because the minimum wage there sits at a paltry 8 cents an hour. I know, you're probably thinking, did he stutter, did he forget a zero or something? Nope, 8 cents per hour. You'd practically earn more digging for loose change in a couch at this point. And it's not like Nigeria isn't raking it in. This is a country with a booming tech sector, a thriving film industry, Nollywood, anyone, and enough natural resources to make a sultan blush. Yet, millions of Nigerians struggle to afford basic necessities, let alone anything close to a decent standard of living. It's almost like there's a disconnect somewhere between the country's vast wealth and the reality of its working class. It's almost as if, and hear me out on this, exploiting a nation's resources and people for the benefit of a select few might not be a recipe for widespread prosperity. Shocking, I know. Alright, let's hop over to Bangladesh, a country that's practically synonymous with the garment industry. You know those fast fashion clothes we all love? The ones that magically appear in stores every week at unbelievably low prices? Yeah, well, someone has to make those clothes, and chances are that someone is in Bangladesh making about 9 cents an hour. Now I'm no fashion expert, but even I can tell you that 9 cents doesn't buy you a whole lot of fabric, let alone a living wage. It's a brutal irony. A country that clothes the world often struggles to clothe, feed, and shelter its own people. But hey, at least we get our cheap t-shirts, right? Except, here's the thing, that cheap t-shirt comes at a cost. It's a cost measured in unsafe working conditions, in environmental damage, and in the crushing poverty that traps millions of Bangladeshi citizens. It's easy to point fingers at the big corporations, and trust me, we will. But it's also on us, the consumers, to be aware of the human cost embedded in those bargain buys. And now, we arrive at the world's largest democracy, a land of vibrant colors, spicy curries, and a minimum wage that would make your wallet cry. That's right, folks, we're talking about India. Now, India's a tricky one because, unlike some of the other countries we've discussed, there isn't one single minimum wage. It varies from state to state, like some sort of dystopian labor market choose-your-own-adventure. But here's the kicker. Even in the best-case scenario, we're talking about a minimum wage that barely scrapes past 10 cents an hour. And in other states, well, let's just say you'd be lucky to earn enough to buy a samosa after a full day's work. It's a tale of two Indias, really. On one hand, you have a booming tech industry, a growing middle class, and a space program that's quite frankly cooler than anything we've got going on. And then on the other hand, you have millions trapped in poverty, struggling to make ends meet in a country that seems to be leaving them behind. Right, buckle up because we're heading to Pakistan, a nation with a rich history and culture, but where the minimum wage is about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. At roughly 12 cents an hour, it's barely enough to afford a single samosa, let alone basic necessities. You see, when your minimum wage is that low, it doesn't just mean people are struggling, it means the entire economy is being held back. It's like trying to win a Formula One race with a car that's powered by a couple of hamsters on a wheel. Ambitious maybe, but ultimately futile. The problem is compounded by the fact that the cost of living in Pakistan isn't exactly stagnant. It's like trying to climb an escalator that's going down. You have to work twice as hard just to stay in the same place. And let's be clear, the same place in this metaphor is still struggling to afford basic necessities. Next, we travel to Ethiopia, a country with a rich history stretching back millennia, known for its ancient civilization and stunning landscapes. Unfortunately, it's also known for having a minimum wage that's stuck in the Stone Age. At a paltry 13 cents an hour, it's less than what many of us spend on a single cup of overpriced coffee. Now I know what you're thinking, John, surely no one can survive on 13 cents an hour. And you'd be right. Many Ethiopians are forced to work multiple jobs, often in the informal sector, just to put food on the table. This leads to a vicious cycle of poverty. People work tirelessly for little pay, which leaves them with no time or resources to improve their skills or education. It's like trying to run a marathon with your shoelaces tied together. You might be determined, but you're not going to get very far. And now, we find ourselves in Haiti, a nation synonymous with breathtaking beauty, vibrant culture, and unfortunately, crippling poverty. The minimum wage here? A paltry 14 cents an hour. That's less than what you probably spend on chewing gum in a week. Now, Haiti has been dealt a rough hand. Let's not forget that. Natural disasters, political instability, you name it, Haiti has unfortunately experienced it. But a 14-cent minimum wage isn't helping anyone recover or rebuild. It's like trying to put out a fire with a squirt gun. Well-intentioned perhaps, but ultimately ineffective. Right, Cambodia. Home to the majestic Angkor Wat, a UNESCO World Heritage Site that draws millions of tourists each year. You know, that incredible temple complex that looks like it was built by an ancient civilization with access to alien technology? Yeah, that one. It's truly awe-inspiring. But behind the splendor of Angkor Wat lies a much harsher reality for many Cambodians. Because while the temples stand as a testament to the country's rich history, they also serve as a stark contrast to the poverty experienced by many of its citizens. See, Cambodia has a minimum wage that hovers around a measly 15 cents an hour. You heard that right, 15 cents. You'd be hard-pressed to find a gumball machine that dispenses its sugary treasures for that little these days. And yet that's what countless Cambodians are expected to live on. It's a situation that's nothing short of outrageous, especially when you consider the profits being generated by the country's tourism industry. It's like visiting a friend's house, marveling at their expensive new art collection, all while knowing they haven't paid their electricity bill in months. Now, a significant portion of Cambodia's workforce is employed in the garment industry. You know, those made in Cambodia tags you see on your clothes? there's a good chance they were stitched by someone working for a pittance. These garment workers, often women from rural areas, toil away in factories producing clothing for international brands, all while struggling to afford basic necessities. It's a classic tale of exploitation, with multinational corporations reaping the benefits while workers bear the brunt of the low wages. And it's not like these companies can plead ignorance, they know exactly what they're doing. They're taking advantage of a desperate workforce and lax labor laws to maximize profits. It's the kind of corporate greed that would make Ebenezer Scrooge blush, and that's saying something. So the next time you're out shopping for a new shirt or pair of pants, take a moment to consider the human cost behind that bargain price tag, because there's a good chance it was made by someone in Cambodia who's being paid a wage that's barely enough to survive on. Alright, let's talk about Myanmar, formerly known as Burma. This Southeast Asian nation has been through quite a lot in recent decades, emerging from decades of military rule and international isolation. It's a country in transition, trying to find its footing on the global stage. But as Myanmar opens up to the world, it's also opening itself up to a whole new set of challenges, particularly when it comes to labor rights and economic justice. Because as foreign investment pours in, so too does the potential for exploitation. And nowhere is this more evident than in Myanmar's minimum wage, which sits at a staggeringly low 16 cents an hour. That's right, 16 cents. It's a wage that's barely enough to keep a goldfish in flake food, let alone support a human being. This shockingly low minimum wage is a symptom of a larger problem in Myanmar, the exploitation of workers in the pursuit of profit. It's a story we've seen play out time and again in developing countries, and it's a story that demands our attention. Now, Myanmar's garment industry, much like Cambodia's, is a major employer, and by major employer we mean a major employer of people working for wages that would make Oliver Twist ask for seconds. These factories, often subcontracted by international brands, churn out clothing at a breakneck pace, all while paying their workers a pittance. It's a vicious cycle of poverty with low wages leading to poor living conditions, which in turn make it difficult for workers to improve their situation. They're trapped in a system that seems designed to keep them down. And the truly disheartening thing is that Myanmar has the potential to be so much more than just a source of cheap labor. It's a country with a rich history, diverse culture, and abundant natural resources. But as long as workers are being exploited and their basic needs are being ignored, Myanmar's true potential will remain untapped. The situation in Myanmar is a stark reminder that economic progress cannot come at the expense of human dignity. It's time for the international community to step up and demand better for the workers of Myanmar. Well folks, we've reached the end of our journey through the depressing world of shockingly low minimum wages. We've seen firsthand how these meager wages trap people in a cycle of poverty, limit their opportunities, and rob them of their dignity. But this isn't just a problem for the countries we've discussed, it's a global issue that demands our attention and action. Because when people are paid a fair wage, everyone benefits. It boosts economies, reduces inequality, and creates a more just and equitable world. So what can you do? Well, for starters, stay informed. Read up on the issues, support organizations fighting for workers' rights, and hold corporations accountable for their actions. Use your voice, your wallet, and your vote to demand better for workers everywhere. Remember, change doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, effort, and a whole lot of outrage. But together, we can make a difference. Thanks for watching.